Welcome to another edition of the Metaphysical Diet. Here we analyze ways to reprogram the subconscious, utilizing astrological cycles in an attempt to steer life towards a more happy and healthier future. Our perception of reality is a momentary projection of our combined focal and subconscious awareness, influenced by the energy fields surrounding us. Food is just another form of energy, vibrating at a given frequency. Nature's bounty is full of fresh, nutritious, quality foods grown under the sun's life-giving properties. These energetic frequencies are transferred to the body on consumption. In contrast, corporate foods, highly processed, lacking in life, light, and nutrition, give us an artificial, perverted alternative. For the mind and body to be in harmony, in good health, and functioning within a balanced consciousness, it needs a moderate supply of fresh vitamins and minerals. A modest supply, in modest proportions, should be enough to satisfy the mind's desire for more nutrients. Highly processed corporate foods with cheap ingredients, preservatives, and additives contain quantity without quality. Consequently, the lack of vital nutrients convince the mind and body that it is still hungry. An unfulfilled diet turns the individual into an enlarged, unfulfilled person, an unhappy and ineffective addition to the human collective. With corporate foods, one will develop a corporate appetite, a corporate body, and finally end up as a corpse. Our food is being tampered with, and has been for a long time. Genetically modified organisms, GMO, are the result of a laboratory process. Genes from the DNA of one species are extracted and artificially merged with the genes of a different plant or animal. The foreign genes may have originated from bacteria, viruses, insects, animals, or even humans. Some of the world's largest global agricultural companies specializing in GMO seeds have produced what are called suicide seeds. Genetic Use Restriction Technology, or GERT, is a genetic modification which causes the second generation of seeds to be sterile, forcing the grower to turn to the seed producer for their annual supply. India, one of the world's largest producers of cotton, was targeted by one of these huge corporations as part of their conquest for seed control around the globe. From the mid-1980s, a well-known company modified their cotton seeds with a gene which turns them into suicide seeds, allowing them to benefit financially from royalties, claiming they had created something new, where in fact they had just perverted an existing seed found in nature. The intellectual rights relating to seeds, something nature produces for free, is widely considered as a fraudulent scam. The globalization project over the past 25 years has allowed these companies to infiltrate domestic markets all over the world, replacing diversity by overshadowing localized varieties found in nature. Varieties which have taken thousands of years to evolve, thriving in specific areas. The one-size-fits-all policy of these GMO seeds competing against nature's abundant varieties and natural selection is staggeringly naive. With their vast wealth, these companies have managed to lock local markets into licensing arrangements, influencing local and regional governments, coerce huge swathes of the farming community, and expand their global monopoly. With glossy literature and slick promotional videos, thousands of Indian farmers of modest means have been lured into the world of GMO seeds. Many of these farmers were offered loans only if they would use the new seeds and pesticides, promising better yields. Costing many times more than the local variety, these GMO seeds didn't always perform as expected, throwing many farmers into financial debt, even ruin. Some, unable to pay their loans, were forced to turn their land and what little assets they had over to the unscrupulous corporations. In the end, many farmers took their own lives. Ironically, the suicide seeds brought about suicide farmers. 95% of India's cotton seeds are now controlled by these big corporations. Over the past 25 years, over 200,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide under the pressure of crippling debt. In 2009 alone, 17,500 Indian farmers committed suicide, 1 every 30 minutes. The other problem associated with GMO crops is cross-contamination, gene pollution, or genetic drift. Over time, it is inevitable that the GMO crops will encroach and pollute organic farms, turning their natural crops into the intellectual property of the large agricultural corporations who own the GMO technical patents. The corporations claim they are trying to help feed the world and fight famine in underdeveloped countries. In reality, they are expanding their monopolies, gaining more control of the food supply and manipulating the situation to make the world's farmers dependent upon their seeds and pesticides. The debate over the safety of GMO will go on for decades. The long-term effects on human biology is still in its infancy. The introduction of new genes into fruit and vegetables may result in new toxins, new bacteria, new allergens, and even new diseases. What is clear is the increase in global control and dependency of our food supply, once free, is now in the hands of the international corporations. Science is a tool which can be used for good or bad. It is certainly clever, but not always wise. In the hands of a psychopathic corporation with a profit-centered agenda, the results can be devastating, a negative benefit to the overall good of humanity. The control of cotton seeds is only the beginning. The objectives of these giant corporations is to do away with natural seed diversity from which they cannot profit from, substituting all seeds with their artificial patented versions, eventually controlling everything we grow and eat. Genetically modified seeds produce genetically modified foods. Genetically modified foods genetically modify those who wish to eat them. The natural balance of frequencies within nature's bounty are being carelessly tampered with, something humanity may never recover from. The main reason for processing food is to eliminate microorganisms and extend shelf life. The closer your diet is to nature, the better the food is for your body. Each process destroys valuable nutrients and alters some properties. Simply cooking, chopping, or combining one food with another is considered a process. Also, exposing food to high levels of heat, light, and/or oxygen will also reduce its nutrient value. Vitamins B and C can be washed out, especially during the boiling process. It is preferable to eat vegetables as close to raw as practically possible, keeping intact the delicate vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and enzymes. The greater the heat and longer the cooking time, the greater the nutrient destruction. When the body craves nutrients, chemicals are produced, giving the feeling of hunger. When nutrient-rich foods are consumed, the body and mind become satisfied. A balanced chemistry will hold off the hunger feeling for a healthy amount of time, keeping the body trim. If the individual consumes dead food, lacking in essential nutrients but full of calories, the body will overeat and still feel hungry. Unable to satisfy a craving for nutrients, the body soon expands, ballooning towards obesity. In the modern age of plenty, the United States has developed a problem with an overweight population. Submerged in fast corporate living, 2 out of every 3 adults are overweight, with 1/3 considered obese. This problem gets worse each year, spreading around the West like a virus, influenced by one another's behavioral patterns. Overweight people are contributing to the human collective with their gluttonous appetite for non-nutritious corporate processed foods. In 2008, a study was conducted and published in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry. The study concluded that raw broccoli appears to deliver anti-cancer compounds 10 times more effectively than cooked broccoli. Another study conducted at the Roswell Park Cancer Institute in Buffalo found that eating small amounts of raw broccoli and cabbage over a period of time reduced the risk of bladder cancer by as much as 40%. There is little doubt that eating plenty of fresh, minimally processed, high-quality vegetables is one of the best ways to stay healthy. The breakfast cereal found in many family homes has been promoted by big corporations as the natural way to start the day. Many cereals are produced from a process called extrusion, where grains are mixed with water to form slurry. This mixture is often forced through an extruder, a tiny hole shaping each cereal at high temperature and pressure. After expanding, they are sprayed with a mixture of sugar and oil. an overall process which destroys most of the initial nutrients that the grain once offered. Many studies have been conducted to see what the effects are from living on these cereals for prolonged periods. One such study in 1960 at the University of Michigan, a tongue-in-cheek study, experimented on 3 groups of rats. The first group was fed on cornflakes and water. Group 2 were fed on the cardboard box which the cereal came in together with water. The third group were fed on rat chow and water. As expected, the third group stayed relatively healthy. However, the second group fed on the box became lethargic, eventually dying of malnutrition. What astounded the research team was the death of the first group, eating the cornflakes. They died days before the rats that were fed on the cardboard box. Furthermore, before death, they threw fits, bit each other, and finally died of convulsions. The experiment was not meant to be a serious study, but the results were far from humorous. It has been suggested that the extrusion process breaks down the organelles and disperse the proteins, which have the potential to become toxic. The body's pH balance is important for maintaining good health, something which has been known for decades. How detrimental a prolonged acidic diet can be to the human body. Unprocessed foods found throughout nature generally lean towards the alkaline side of the pH scale. Occasionally, we find some natural foods which are mildly acidic. Foods full of naturally occurring nutrients promote health and keep the body's pH in good order. Processed foods, on the other hand, tend to be more acidic, contributing to an increase in health problems for people, especially throughout developed countries, who find themselves being seduced by advertising and other social pressures into consuming highly processed acidic foods. Excess acid in the body can lead to many problems such as indigestion, nausea, bloating, gout, cataracts, constipation, strokes, allergies, heart disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, and cancer. Research has shown a link between acid pH and cancer. Cancer thrives in an acidic environment, producing lactic acid as it grows. Some research scientists suspect a link between pH, candida, and cancer. The yeast fungus called candida is present in all of us. When the fungus overwhelms the gut's probiotic presence, the candida becomes an overall health threat. Cancer tumors have been found to reside amongst candida colonies. It appears that the best way to keep the gut healthy and the candida under control is to consume fresh alkaline foods within nature's bounty. Before the introduction of modern supermarkets, most foods were bought and produced locally, keeping them fresh and close to nature's source. The average family also grew a limited selection of fruit and vegetables in their own gardens, contributing to a healthier lifestyle. Processed packaged foods are convenient for the modern time-poor corporate worker, but generally not as good for their health. Pre-made boxed meals, microwaved, ready to eat in 10 minutes, is a recipe for disaster. No wonder developed countries are seeing an explosion in the rates of cancer, diabetes, and other life-threatening illnesses. They say you are what you eat. To a certain extent, this is true. The human body, on one hand, is delicate and fragile, but on the other hand, robust and resilient. What we put into our bodies is far more important than what most people realize. Outside our 5 senses, within the electrical universe, everything is giving off a frequency. Food is no exception. Nature provides us with an abundance of perfect foods found throughout the world, helping to sustain a healthy balance of mind and body, keeping communication flowing between all levels of consciousness. These natural foods harness life-giving energy emanating from the sun, which eventually pass on to us. Highly processed foods lose that energy. In their arrogance, the corporations try to compete with this balance. They pervert nature at the DNA level with profit-motivated science, trying to control all aspects of our food production, supply, and consumption, even to the point of how we cook the food. It seems that the main objective of these corporations is to entice you away from healthy self-sufficiency into a life of unhealthy dependency on their inferior products. Suspiciously linked at higher levels within a form of Orwellian control system, processed food dependency also favors large pharmaceutical corporations offering medications and temporary relief for symptoms brought about by poor nutrition. Through long-term dependency on drugs and medical procedures, the big pharmaceutical corporations profit from long drawn-out treatments to which many people would have been better off using natural remedies, better diet, and/or lifestyle changes. The further we drift away from nature, the more detrimental it is to our overall health and well-being. In a capitalist-style democracy, the relationship between government policy and the prosperity of industry are very much interlinked. When I was 11 years old, in 1979, Margaret Thatcher's Tory government came to power in the United Kingdom. At that time, school meals had evolved into a long-valued tradition for all British school children, an important contribution towards providing a healthy, balanced diet for the masses. Before Thatcher, the school and local authorities would carefully design a variety of balanced, well-portioned meals for the children to enjoy. This all changed when nutritional standards were scrapped in favour of competitive tendering. The traditional school meal was contracted out to the private sector, replacing school kitchens with snack bars and canteen-style dining rooms. The old, modest portioned balanced meal was replaced by a selection of fast foods like chips, beans, pies, sausages and burgers. I personally remember the change which took place at my school around 1982. I was so appalled and disappointed at the choice on offer that I began to walk home for lunch following the changes. Although most people in Western countries contribute to their government's finances, some of these institutions are increasingly coming under pressure to balance the nation's books. With an aging population, they are struggling to cope with the increase in pension handouts. Consequently, they needed an alternative option which would give them a way out. They realized a long time ago, using projected computer models, that they could not afford to support millions of healthy old people. One way around this was to promote unhealthy eating and drinking habits early on. This had to be done in such a way that it would be seen as a personal free market choice, and the people it was targeted at, who became obese and sick in the process, only had themselves to blame. In the meantime, those organizations promoting such policies increased revenue for the government and shareholders from various sources, including fast food giants, pharmaceutical corporations, and the medical profession. Very little happens in this world, especially on the scale of Western obesity, that is not planned by government agencies, think tanks, or policy makers. It is meant to happen. There are many environmental factors known as defaults, which influence people's day-to-day lives using subtle yet sophisticated ways. Countries which are suffering from an obesity epidemic have slowly created a set of environmental defaults which are contributing to their population's rise in obesity. In a 2012 summary of a selection of reports produced by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, presented in a document entitled Role of Policy and Government in Obesity Epidemic, it was stated, the OECD supported the idea that regulatory and fiscal policy could reduce obesity by improving defaults for the whole population. It appears that the recent huge expansion of fast food outlets throughout the private sector have been allowed and even encouraged by city planners and government policy makers because it suits their overriding agenda. The system of control which works behind the scenes to produce and expand the globalization project is a well-oiled machine which has evolved over a long period of time. It appears that your controllers, the established elite, have a sinister plan for the future of humanity, and in order to achieve their goals, the vast majority of us need to be divided, undermined, and disempowered in order to prevent any form of cohesive unions from threatening their hegemony. They have been referred to as a small clique operating above elected politicians, bureaucrats, and civil servants, with sub-clubs beneath them specializing in specific areas promoting social change. The further the globalization project advances, the more control, order, and restrictions are being placed on humanity. Increasing vaccines, pharmaceutical drug consumption, along with more electromagnetic pollution. With a global or international one-size-fits-all policy, problems produced by those policies will be replicated across the planet. Each generation is subjected to more unnatural stimuli than the previous one, pulling them further away from their natural harmonious balance with nature's rhythms and cycles. Diet injections and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. Bertrand Russell, The Impact of Science on Society. As each new generation is steered towards new social norms of political correctness, fitting neatly into the cogs of projected government initiatives and public policy, their basic grounding coordinates of morality in comparison to previous generations become distorted. And as the decades pass, those social norms and moral coordinates which were once took for granted will disappear in a vacuum of stimulated trends, fads, and fashions. Consequently, what we consider normal behavior today has been manufactured. The only lasting foundation of untainted truth of both history and the human conscious relationship with nature, the macrocosm and the logos, is the information contained within the astrological zodiac. Its profound synchronicity and poetical wisdom has stood unchanged for thousands of years. It is our only true benchmark to nature, our real heritage, to ancient history, and a guide to the universal parameters of truth. Consequently, astrology has been the target of ridicule by the establishment and mainstream mouthpieces for years, predominantly by those who know very little about the subject. If you undermine all levels of unity within society, the people will never be able to come together to oppose the system which controls them. The increase in obesity may be another initiative designed to undermine the health of a nation, along with a decline in social cohesion. It is therefore up to the individual to take back control of their own eating habits and overall lives in order to become the best version of themselves in the short time they are here in this physical reality. In the summer of 1992, in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, a United Nations conference was organized called the Earth Summit, also known as Agenda 21. Its overall objective was to promote sustainable development for the future of mankind and the planet in general for the coming 21st century. By the end of the summit, 178 countries had signed up to its proposed initiatives, which included the following: the phasing out of national sovereignty, the phasing out of private property, state control, planning and management of all land resources, restructuring of the family unit, along with state management and interference of the raising of all children, the creation of human settlement zones, job allocation by the state, within the state, and for the state, mass migration and resettlement as people are moved away from rural areas into human settlement zones, restructuring of the educational system to prepare the next generation into accepting Agenda 21, mass global depopulation to a sustainable level. It appears that, in order for the United Nations to achieve its ultimate objectives, the majority of the human race must be domesticated towards these goals, while at the same time undermining any possibility of resistance. Individual rights will need to be curtailed in favor of those who are steering the collective. Although obesity was on a steady increase prior to 1992, the rate of increase seems to have accelerated at an alarming rate after the implementation of Agenda 21. The United Nations Decade of Education and Sustainable Development sought to mobilize the educational resources of the world to help create a more sustainable future. The overall goal of the United Nations Decade of Education for Sustainable Development was to integrate the principles, values, and practices of sustainable development into all aspects of education and learning. This educational effort encouraged changes in behavior that created a more sustainable future in terms of environmental integrity, economic viability, and a just society for present and future generations. UNESCO. To distinguish between being overweight or obese, a simple body mass index calculation is produced, in which a person's weight in kilograms is divided by the square of his or her height in meters. A person with a body mass index equal or over 25 falls in the overweight range, but anyone with 30 or above is considered obese. What stands out above all from the previous two graphs is the number of women in comparison to men suffering from obesity. The sun and moon have traditionally represented the male and female in both astrology and ancient cultures. Women are considered to be more internal, sensitive, and in tune with their emotions, representing many things associated with the moon's metaphysical characteristics. Men, on the other hand, reflect the sun's characteristics concerning the focal aspect of consciousness, the ego, and many of the sun's attributes concerning this physical realm. This fact that women are more susceptible than men with regard to weight gain may have something to do with the female's traditional metaphysical makeup and greater connection to the spiritual subconscious. The metaphysical differences between men and women are explored in greater depth in my 2017 book, Metaphysics of the Gods. The United States, home of the United Nations, has the worst rates of overweight and obesity out of all the world's developed countries. At present, 7 states have a population obesity rate above 35%, with West Virginia leading the field with a staggering 38.1% having a body mass index equal or over 30. Although America is one of the last countries to preserve the right to bear arms, a provision placed within the Constitution to repel any challenge to their republic, foreign or domestic. The fact that so many Americans are shockingly overweight may eliminate any advantage, rendering them vulnerable to a loss of independence and sovereignty. Juvenal was a Roman satirical poet, circa 100 AD, who came up with the phrase bread and circuses. Juvenal, who originated the phrase, used it to decry the selfishness of common people and their neglect of wider concerns. The phrase implies a population's erosion or ignorance of civic duty as a priority. Together with the desire to eradicate national sovereignty, there is a push to depopulate the planet to a manageable level, all part of Agenda 21's sustainable development. Many elites throughout history have desired the culling of those who they consider as useless eaters. They are eugenicists, Over the centuries, they have callously sent millions of young men to their deaths in unnecessary conflicts against their own brothers and sisters in other countries. Of all the problems which we have to face in the future, in my opinion, the most difficult will be those concerning the treatment of the inferior races of mankind. Leonard Darwin, son of Charles Darwin. I just wonder what it would be like to be reincarnated in an animal whose species had been so reduced in numbers that it was in danger of extinction. What would be its feelings towards the human species, whose population explosion had denied it somewhere to exist? I must confess that I am tempted to ask for reincarnation as a particularly deadly virus. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's heading up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. Bill Gates, TED Conference 2012. In 1979, about the same time Margaret Thatcher was moving into 10 Downing Street, an unknown organization erected 6 giant granite stones in Elbert County, Georgia. The inscriptions on the stones supported the idea of sustainable development and depopulation. Known as the Georgia Guidestones, the monument conveyed a set of 10 guidelines in 8 modern languages and 4 ancient ones. Today's global population is approximately 7.125 billion. The proposal is to reduce this down to a mere 500 million, a staggering 93% reduction. There are many ways to promote depopulation without resorting to brutal systematic slaughter of undesirables. More sophisticated yet subtle ways of persuasion are used to distract each new generation from participating in population expansion. Lifestyle choice, living as a single person, is no longer seen as a social stigma. In 2017, the US Census reported 110 million unmarried people over the age of 18. That's 45% of the American adult population carrying out their lives to a new set of social norms. The promotion of LGBT lifestyles no longer regarded as taboo. Drawing on the widest survey of sexual behavior since the Kinsey Report, David Spiegelhalter, in his book Sex by Numbers, answers key questions about our private lives. Here he reveals how Kinsey's contested claim that 10% of us are gay is actually close to the mark. The Guardian, 2015. Debt has become an acceptable burden to a whole new generation who consider it as the norm, putting many people off having a family due to financial worries. A recent survey by the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys says members are seeing a big increase in people whose student loans are forcing them to delay major purchases or starting families. The Wall Street Journal, 2012. Reduction in male sperm counts. News last week that sperm counts in Western men have halved confirmed what experts already knew. The real problem is that no one knows why. The Guardian, 2017. choosing a career over motherhood. According to a recent New York Post article, 43% of college-educated women between the ages of 33 and 46 are child-free, and many of these women appear to be bypassing motherhood altogether, as opposed to simply postponing it. Psychology Today, 2011. Before the intrusion of large governments imposing their will in nearly every aspect of our lives, most people were relatively self-sufficient. Much of their food was produced locally or by themselves in small garden allotments. Their diets were generally healthier and closer to nature. Before big governments, big banks, and big wars, the people who lived before the 20th century rarely died from diseases like cancer or diabetes. With the expansion of the Industrial Revolution and the migration of millions of people from rural communities into the cities, the need for storable foods increased. Food companies sprang up, producing products en masse, mixing nature's bounty with artificial chemicals and preservatives which would enhance the taste and give their products a longer shelf life. Unfortunately, during these processes, the nutritional value of the original foods became distorted, overtaken by the detrimental effects of the chemicals used in the preservation process. It is possible that the accumulative effect of synthetic chemical additives found in today's foods could be responsible for a multitude of unwanted side effects. Could this be a leading cause behind today's increase in a wide variety of modern diseases? Some scientists seem to think so. Chemicals have replaced bacteria and viruses as the main threat to human health. The diseases we're beginning to see as the major cause of death in the latter part of the century and into the 21st century are diseases of chemical origin. Rick Irvin, toxicologist, Texas A&M University. There are two big, and by big I mean monumental, problems with the argument and the perspective taken by federal regulatory agencies and by the manufacturers of foods and medicines. The argument is that trace levels of these chemicals do no harm to human health. What that argument ignores is the cumulative effect of hundreds, if not thousands, of these chemicals entering and then mixing with the human body. This is known as the body burden. We each carry a body burden of these synthetic chemicals. Randall Fitzgerald, author of The 100-Year Lie. word sugar is derived from the word shukra, the Sanskrit word for the planet Venus. The link between excessive sugar consumption and weight gain is well documented. Its main problem is that it is a major calorie source with little or no nutritional value. The chemical process within the body which promotes fat storage is relatively straightforward. It basically revolves around insulin levels. When the body is chemically balanced and working normally, food is digested in the gut, releasing glucose into the bloodstream. This in turn triggers beta cells within the pancreas to increase the level of insulin, which then allows the glucose to be used by the body's cells for energy. The greater the insulin levels, the greater the metabolism of glucose. If energy released from this glucose is not used during our daily energy expenditure, it eventually becomes stored in the body's cells as fat deposits. When all our food is digested and glucose levels in the body subside, insulin levels reduce accordingly. This changes the body's metabolism over from fat storage to fat usage, and all those little fat deposits stored within the body's cells start to break down into usable forms of energy. Consequently, the longer the fasting process between meals, the longer the fat burn period brought about by low levels of insulin. In a recent study reported by the Intensive Dietary Management website, 14 diabetics were given oral insulin over a 6-month period. Their insulin levels were steadily increased up to 100 units per day. By the end of the study, their body weight had increased on average by 19 pounds. Furthermore, this was in spite of a reduction in daily food consumption by an average 300 calories each. Although the patients ate less, they put on a significant amount of weight, suggesting it was the insulin, not the calories, driving the weight gain. What happens when we give high doses of insulin to patients? Insulin makes you gain weight. The more insulin you take, the more weight you gain. It almost doesn't matter how much you eat or how much you try to exercise. The weight just keeps coming on. In another study conducted with 708 diabetics, oral insulin was added to their treatment. As expected, they gained weight. The patients who received the highest doses of insulin gained the most, while those on the low doses gained the least. Under the influence of insulin, our body receives instructions to gain fat. In response, we eat more and/or decrease energy expenditure. It is not a voluntary act. The question is not how to balance calories. The question is how to balance our hormones. In most cases, the critical question is not how to reduce calories, but how to reduce insulin. UT Southwestern Medical Center researchers have identified a crucial link between high levels of insulin and pathways that lead to obesity. There is a condition where the body's cells fail to respond normally to varying levels of insulin. Consequently, as glucose enters the blood, more insulin is produced to counteract the body's resistance, promoting weight gain, as more insulin means more fat storage. If insulin resistance is not reversed, it can lead to type 2 diabetes along with an increased risk of weight gain. The condition is promoted by a habitual high intake of too much sugar, fructose, and carbohydrates at regular intervals, interfering with the body's natural ability to reset its overall chemical balance. To reverse the detrimental slide towards insulin resistance, a low-sugar, carbohydrate diet needs to be implemented along with periods of fasting. The abuse of alcohol through binge drinking will also contribute to insulin resistance. Western society is consuming far too much sugar. The World Health Organization have recently reduced their recommendation for a person's sugar consumption down to no more than 5% of their total energy intake. This is equivalent to approximately 25 grams or 6 teaspoons per day. However, the average American today consumes 19.5 teaspoons or 82 grams. When taking into account that a small 12-ounce can of Coke contains an alarming 39 grams of sugar, anyone who consumes a modest soft drink smashes their daily sugar allowance in minutes. By eating a high sugar carbohydrate diet at regular intervals, the body loses its sensitivity towards insulin. This is compared to the drug addict needing larger amounts of the drug to achieve the same result. The body is the same with insulin. Abusing it with a constant stream of sugar and carbs will reduce its sensitivity. It is thought that around 1/3 of the world's population has some degree of insulin resistance. Promoting greater levels of insulin, which turns off the fat burn process. What they need is the opposite. Insulin sensitivity. When the body is sensitive to insulin, less of the hormone needs to be produced to achieve the desired effect, reducing the chance of weight gain. To reverse an insulin-resistant metabolism, changes need to be made to give your body a break from the unhealthy onslaught of high sugar and carb consumption. According to Thomas DeLure, a fitness and optimization coach, implementing a sugar-carb starvation diet for 2 to 3 days, together with intermittent fasting, can help reset the body's sensitivity to insulin. Low insulin levels also trigger the body's natural healing process to take place, restoring balance and overall health. There are a variety of great foods which will promote insulin sensitivity. Foods low in sugars and carbohydrates. More exercise and more sleep will also improve insulin sensitivity. The concept of fasting to reset the body's chemical equilibrium in order to promote its natural healing potential has been known about for thousands of years. Various studies have been conducted to determine the positive effects fasting can have regarding ill health. Testimonial 1. Asthma, bronchitis, sinusitis, and eczema. After I had asthma attacks that led to a serious case of bronchitis, I decided to register at the Hawaii Naturopathic Retreat Center to undergo a supervised water fast. I had chronic sinusitis for many years that required me to always keep with me something with which I could blow my nose. I also had chronic eczema, which was especially bad on my heels. That night, as I began my fast, I had a typical asthma attack, but took no medication to quell it. It took more than 2 hours before I could breathe well. enough to go back to sleep. That is the last time that I had such an attack. My water fast lasted 14 days, most of which was spent resting at the center, as my energy levels were exceptionally low. Rest was what I needed, so no conflict there. Like the asthma symptoms, the sinus congestion also disappeared, and the crusty, cracking eczema on my heels gradually improved 95%, so that they are now close to normal. Kurt Lloyd, 49 years old, June 2008. Testimonial 2. Chronic back pain, overweight, low energy. I was feeling like a low-energy slug, overweight and burdened with chronic back pain. I spent thousands of dollars on treatments and supplements which gave me partial and temporary relief over years of effort. I fasted for 10 days with Maya's guidance, wisdom and care. My pain steadily decreased. I broke my fast on fresh juices and raw organic living foods. Both juices and raw foods are still the mainstream of my diet, and I love it. I feel so good that I have become a true believer in the power of living nutrition. My tastes have adjusted to enjoy raw, simple foods more than other junk. I have more energy and enthusiasm for exercise and have kept my weight off. I am now 10 pounds lighter, pain-free, happier in my body and brimming with vitality. Ari Vandershot, November 2003. Testimonial 3. Cysts in ovaries. Had a 7 to 9 centimeter cyst in my ovaries that went completely away after 3 cycles of long fasting. A friend had to get a cyst of a similar size removed with surgery and told me how traumatic it was for her body. So I fasted instead, hoping it would help, and it did. First was 14 days, and I also got my period for the first time in about 7 or 8 months during that fast. The second, about 2 or 3 months after, was 3.5 weeks. Then about a month after that, I fasted for another week. I had only weak tea and water in the first one, coffee, tea and water in the second and third. Was good and really damn easy actually. It also helped with fixing some of my lifelong food issues, which was the best silver lining to all of this. Over out, January 2008. According to research conducted by neuroscientist Mark Mattson, Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and others, cutting your energy intake by fasting several days a week might help your brain ward off neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, while at the same time improving memory and mood. What the Bible says about fasting. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Matthew 4:1-3. While they were worshipping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, "Set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them." So after they had fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and sent them off. Acts 13:2-3. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. Daniel 10:3. I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. Luke 18:12. What the Quran says about fasting. O you who have believed, decreed upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you, that you may become righteous. Fasting for a limited number of days, so whoever among you is ill or on a journey during them, then an equal number of days are to be made up, and upon those who are able to fast, but with hardship, a ransom of feeding a poor person each day, and whoever volunteers excess, it is better for him, but to fast is best for you, if you only knew. The month of Ramadan is that in which was revealed the Quran, a guidance for the people and clear proofs of guidance and criterion. So whoever sights the new moon of the month, let him fast it. And whoever is ill or on a journey, then an equal number of other days. Allah intends for you ease and does not intend for you hardship, and wants for you to complete the period and to glorify Allah for that to which He has guided you, and perhaps you will be grateful. Many people fail to appreciate the significance sugar plays in their diet, focusing all their attention on the fat content. As a result, their shopping trolleys are full of low-fat foods which contain high levels of sugar. This is a recipe for disaster, and they wonder why they are still putting on weight. Below are a few common foods which contain surprisingly high levels of sugar. Yogurt. Some fat-free brands contain high levels of sugar as a countermeasure to improve texture and taste after the fat has been removed. A modest serving of 150 grams can contain as much as 20 grams of sugar, nearly all the daily recommended allowance. Coleslaw, made up of shredded vegetables mixed with mayonnaise, considered a healthy option for many consumers, but within the mayonnaise there is a certain amount of sugar. Each spoonful serving of coleslaw contains on average 1 teaspoon or 4 grams of sugar. Bread. Many bread manufacturers add sugar to their mix to enhance the taste, especially highly processed varieties. Some slices can contain as much as 3 grams, almost 1 teaspoon of sugar. Fruit juices. Many supermarket brands of fruit juice contains large amounts of sugar. Some versions contain as much sugar as soft drinks. Sports drinks. These drinks have become popular over the past few years, giving people the impression they are the healthy option. However, a standard 570 milliliter bottle contains on average 32 grams of added sugar. Breakfast cereal. Some cereals contain high levels of added sugar, especially certain varieties aimed at young children. Some have been found to contain as much as 12 grams per 30-gram serving. If you are the type of person who is heavily influenced by the people around you, social pressures, fads and fashions, you are more likely to put on weight if you surround yourself with obese people. They say you become like the people you associate with. One reason for this is because a new benchmark of normality develops within the parameters of your view of acceptable behavior. Within that collective, bad eating habits will be generously catered for in a free market environment. It takes a uniquely disciplined individual not to be influenced to some degree by their social collective. A person living in a small town in Southeast Asia, surrounded by relatively slim people, will develop natural expectations to conform to their social norms within that collective, which will eventually impact their subconscious, sowing new seeds which will change their habitual nature to conform. When a child is brought up by obese parents, the child's fragile sponge-like brain will absorb the behavioral patterns of the parents during those formative years, essentially being programmed by the parents' unhealthy habits. The elephant Ganesha within the child's subconscious is given his coordinates and direction from its early influence. The child will follow in its parents' footsteps, repeating a life of obesity and possible ill health. Many children at an early age are encouraged by their peers to associate brightly colored, sugar-laden beverages with a reward for good behavior or an association with positive emotions. The sweet taste and bright colors will germinate deep-rooted seeds within their subconscious, which will continue to stimulate urges for the drinks well into the future. Considering the amount of sugar in such drinks and the likelihood of developing insulin resistance through regular consumption, the whole act of introducing children to these drinks is a form of child abuse. Unfortunately, most parents are unaware of the associated dangers. Alcohol and drugs are the domain of the planet Neptune, dreams and illusions. Alcohol is used as a tool to manipulate and seduce people into lowering their body's resonant vibration. Consequently, it is often referred to as a spirit. This is no accident. After the small window of euphoria has ended, the remaining and lasting effects of consuming alcohol are that of a depressant, pulling those who use it down towards the vibratory frequencies of the base chakra, ruled by Saturn. The word alcohol is thought to have its origins in the Arabic word alcohol or alcohol. Coal was used in ancient Egypt as an antiseptic, cosmetic, and eyeliner. However, it is also thought that alcohol is the origin for the word ghoul, a reference to a body-eating spirit. By consuming alcohol into the body, it in effect extracts the very essence of the soul, allowing the body to be more susceptible to neighboring entities, most of which are of low frequencies. Jason Christoph. It is widely promoted in most developed countries as part of an overall strategy to neutralize and destabilize many people's ability to benefit from their natural balanced equilibrium between their soul, focal mind, and their spirit, subconscious mind. Alcohol will also undermine a person's willpower, especially concerning eating habits and lifestyle choices. Once under the influence, those strict guidelines which were leading them towards health, wealth, and happiness can easily go astray, being cast aside for old habits of junk food, binge drinking, and tobacco smoking. Apart from increasing the risk of insulin resistance, the regular use and cumulative effects of alcohol on the body can lead to some serious problems. The brain. Alcohol disrupts the brain's communication pathways, affecting behavior, moods, and clarity of thinking. The heart. The accumulative effect of too much alcohol, together with binge drinking, can damage the heart in a variety of ways. It can cause stretching of the heart muscle, irregular heartbeats, together with high blood pressure and the increased risk of a stroke. The liver. Although the liver has the ability to regenerate, a constant barrage of alcohol abuse can cause serious damage, with conditions like alcohol-induced hepatitis, fatty liver, fibrosis, and cirrhosis. Pancreas. Alcohol abuse can disrupt the normal functions of the pancreas, leading to poor digestion, along with many other complications. Cancer. Because alcohol travels all over the body, excessive abuse can promote a variety of cancers. Common ones from drinking are heart and neck cancers, esophagus cancer, liver cancer, breast cancer, and colorectal cancer. Alcohol can also lower a person's immune system, leaving them vulnerable to diseases like pneumonia and tuberculosis. With all this taken into account, it is understandable that the consumption of alcohol is banned in many countries, cultures, and religions. It really is the slow poisoning of the body and should be avoided if one wishes to be the greatest version of themselves. Consequently, it is important to refrain from drinking any alcohol for at least one full day prior to the new moon, because the body needs to be in its best condition for the fasting and meditation process to achieve the required results. If you are determined to snack in the evening, it is vitally important that you choose foods which will not increase your blood sugar, raising a spike in insulin levels. This will break the fasting process and place your body once more in the fat storage mode. It is therefore important to choose your snacks wisely by opting for something with a low glycemic value. This value is a measure or percentage of glucose in the food, 100 being pure glucose. The secret to avoid weight gain is basically about what you eat and when you eat it. We are stardust, we are golden, and we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. Joni Mitchell, 1970, Woodstock. There is a way out of being trapped in a perpetual unhealthy loop of weight gain, diets, and laziness. The first thing to do is to accept there is a problem. Once you admit to yourself that you really have lost control of your dietary habits, only then can you move forward in the right direction. Your new priority is to get back to nature's bounty, along with its timeless rhythms and cycles. Those old habits need to be broken, and there is no time like the present to begin. Consider moving towards the metaphysical diet, introducing periodic moon phase fasting, which will help to break old cycles and grow new healthy seeds with positive intent. There is a system of agriculture known as permaculture, permanent agriculture, a sustainable system based on modest agricultural ecosystems and nature's rhythms and cycles. This concept allows an individual or family to produce most of their own food within a relatively small area which is mostly self-regulating and low maintenance. By growing as much of your own food as is practicably possible, you reduce the risk of adverse reactions from the accumulation of synthetic chemicals.